Welcome to the Fallon Forum. My name is John Krieg. I'm your guest host today. My guest is Jerry Blanchard of Des Moines. He's an author, researcher. He's written the book Ancient Ways, Indigenous Healing Innovations for the 21st Century. We'll be talking about the question of trauma. Is trauma always bad? Can trauma be transformational? Jerry Blanchard coming up next on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
Hello, Mid-American Energy.
I'm very concerned that you want to bill me an extra $5,000 to build a nuclear reactor. Do you know we're in the middle of a recession?
Oh, we were hoping you wouldn't hear about that until after the legislature had taken action.
Why not let your shareholders pick up the tab?
Oh, way too risky for our shareholders. We need you, our loyal customers, to pay for it.
Wait, let me see if I understand this. Mid-American wants to build a nuclear power plant in 10 or 20 years, and they want me to pay for it now?
That's right.
Well, I'll just take my business elsewhere.
Sorry, we're a monopoly. What we say goes.
I've heard nuclear power is more expensive than other sources.
Yes it is.
And I've heard there's no plan for how to dispose of nuclear waste.
We're looking at shooting it into the sun.
Well, I'm not going to sit back and let you make bad decisions with my money.
We're betting you will.
Stop Mid-American's power grab. Call your legislators today. 281-3371. 281-3371.
Paid for by Physicians for Social Responsibility.
Located in the heart of Beaverdale, Tally's offers speedy and affordable rooftop lunch, catering for events both large and small, innovative cuisine, as well as vegetarian and gluten-free menus. Come to Tally's for live music, dry-aged steaks, Sunday brunch, and all-you-can-eat ribs every Monday night. Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering at 2712 Beaver Avenue. Call 279-2067. That's 279-2067.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fallon Forum. I'm guest host John Krieg. I'd like to thank Brother Trucker, who's tuned downtown, started this program today. I'd like to thank our organizational sponsors, the Iowa Chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility and the Sierra Club Iowa Chapter. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this segment, Gateway Market, and I want to invite everyone to be a part of the conversation by calling 515-244-0077 or the toll-free number 855-244-0077. Again, I'm John Krieg, substituting for Ed Fallon, who's vacationing. Ed will call in later today on the show. And my guest is Jerry Blanchard of Des Moines. He's an author, researcher, and we're going to be talking today about trauma. Is trauma always a bad thing? Can transformation and growth come out of trauma? And so, Jerry, let's, if you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit more to our audience and tell us about what you're working on these days.
42 years, I've worked as a therapist, a psychotherapist outside of Iowa. I've been here now for several years, and much of that work has been on both sides of trauma, particularly, though, interpersonal violence, the trauma that results from that. Working with victims and survivors, but also with violent men, sex offenders, even serial killers and mass murderers. So there's a certain timeliness, perhaps, for us to have this discussion today. But over the years in working with trauma victims in therapy, I've come to be incredibly inspired not only by their resilience, which is that ability to bounce back after a difficult event, but their ability to be transformed and go to another level of adjustment and happiness in life following even some of the most severe traumas. So witnessing the inspiration of so many patients, I gathered stories, I've looked at some of the research, and it's spawning another book This one will be called From Trauma to Transformation, where I talk about post-traumatic growth, which is an alternate way of viewing what happens after trauma. We can experience PTSD, but that's not a dead-end destination.
PTSD, post-traumatic.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, what we talk about when we think of Newtown, Connecticut, or any other kinds of trauma that come up, we fear that people will suffer from that, when in fact only about 7 or 8% of people going through trauma come up with that disorder. And I argue in this forthcoming book that PTSD is oftentimes the catalyst for the development of a thriving response. So then I talk about PTG, post-traumatic growth. Or in the words of another author, Dr. Paul Pearsall, there's something he calls post-traumatic thriving response, PTTR. I'm just using the former letters because it's easier to remember. But the bottom line is this: trauma does not have to be devastating. It doesn't have to lead to an unending suffering. And there are a number of variables, a number of factors that we can point to, that I can point to, which tell people how they can buttress their children for the inevitable. Because we know that virtually all of us, 75% of the American populace, will undergo a trauma sometime in their life. But approximately 20% of us go through a significant trauma every 12 months. So we better realize and acknowledge the fact that life does deliver some painful blows from time to time. And we can ready ourselves for that. We can ready our children from that. And I will argue in the forthcoming book, like I did in my last book, Ancient Ways, that there are indigenous people's lessons and their ancient wisdom traditions that will give us additional advice and insights on how we can grow after trauma. Being trained in psychology, I used to think that we sort of had the corner on this topic, that we understood it better than most people. And what I'm finding is that the traditions that are thousands of years old realize and teach us that suffering really, pain and trauma, first of all, are inevitable. But suffering on a continued basis is somewhat optional. So that's our task, is to brace ourselves for what life delivers and then have a response ready for it and make something out of that. It's like some people say, we have to learn how to make lemonade out of lemons. That's real easy to say, and it might almost be regarded as kind of a flippant description right now in light of what's happened in Newtown. And I don't want to take away from any of the power, the devastation, the terror, the horror that the children and adults in that community have gone through and are still going through. This is not to diminish that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I will say is that even with very severe traumas such as that, the majority of people will not be permanently damaged by it. And there's much we now can say and do to mitigate against long-standing impact.
So what kind of growth could you envision coming from, say, a terrible tragedy like what happened in Newtown?
What first comes to my mind is research that just was published earlier this year at the University of Leeds, which is in England. And they studied 35 people who have gone through very significant, powerful, we would say awful tragedies. And of those 35, 24 had profound growth experiences afterward. Now, some of their traumas included near-death experiences. And I just saw on NBC this morning a man talking about children who had run from the school and showed up at his doorstep in a panic, getting away from the gunfire at their school. And so that would qualify for what could be interpreted as a near-death experience. But in addition to that, many of these people had multiple, very severe and significant traumas. And again, 24 out of 35 showed significant growth after the events. And here's one of the most fascinating things, John. They've also looked at people who have experienced just horrific kinds of trauma, some of the most severe trauma events imaginable. And it's that group of people that seems to significantly bounce forward rather than just bounce back to pre-trauma days. They seem to bounce forward after significant, severe traumas. Then they studied people who had undergone 2 significant traumas of that sort and found that they grew more than the first group with only 1 trauma. Then they studied people that had undergone 3 severe traumas, and they had the most significant growth measurable. So that defies so much of what my profession, the counseling profession, has been teaching for years, that the events of trauma are going to spell our demise. And in fact, the events don't have much to do with it. What's really significant is our response to events. And I'm not even saying our reaction, because that's almost impulsive. That first instinctive reaction to a traumatic event. I'm talking about our response versus our reaction. And this is where our thought processes and our emotional support network and other factors come into the picture. So my argument is that our response patterns will determine how much, if anything, trauma harms us in most instances, and how much we're going to grow as a result of how we posture ourselves toward painful events.
Well, Jerry, what are some of those factors that determine whether a person suffers, say, a lot of stress, ongoing stress from a trauma, or whether they really do grow? Both personal and societal factors. What plays into that?
Our upbringing is important. We have some cumbersome words in my professional language for this, but cognitive flexibility, the flexibility in your thinking is real important. Some people let other folks do their thinking for them. Like they go to a psychologist and say, tell me what's wrong. We render a diagnosis, and then that label oftentimes sticks with people. But there are other people who are raised by parents to have a flexible, explanatory style, meaning they explain events to themselves and their children in a way that makes sense out of the seemingly senseless. Now, if we go to Newtown, for example, I don't know how many times I've rightfully heard the word senseless being applied to that situation. How do you make sense of something so horrible? But when you are raised in a community or in a family or with parents who are always trying to figure out, well, what's to be learned here? That's one of the pieces of armor that we can put on our children to get them practiced in figuring out, how am I going to deal with this event? It wasn't too many years ago, if you'd go to a high school parking lot, the kids used to have bumper stickers on their vehicles that translated Buddhist language into our language, and it said, blank happens. The kids get it. They realize that life's going to deliver some powerful, painful blows, and they're not going to be in severe denial. They're going to recognize it's going to happen, and they want tools to deal with it. So another one of the techniques, if you will, that seems to mitigate trauma is someone who's willing to sit with the trauma a bit. In other words, to sit with the accompanying emotions of trauma. So often, nature tells us to dissociate, which means we just go away mentally, go away during a powerful and traumatic event, and it blocks out memories. It's instinct, it's nature, how we're designed sometimes to cope. But not everybody goes away. Some of us see and remember awful things that happen in front of us. So we have to sometimes revisit those events in a thoughtful, titrated, kind of measured way, little by little, so that we don't just run and duck, but instead we're able to rumble, to get it on with discomfort, spend some time with it, and then punch out when it seems to be a bit too much. Take a recess from those memories. So it isn't all about blocking out painful events. It isn't about pounding on pillows and screaming and yelling about what happened to get rid of our pain. It's an ebb and a flow, and we want to emotionally surf emotions. So we could be standing on the shore of the Indian Ocean, let's say, and there's this gigantic tsunami wave approaching us. To one person, that's a harbinger, a portent of death. It's just a matter of time before I'm covered with this wave and die. Another person, like when there was some high waves off Portugal not long ago, a super high wave that never been before measured that high, a surfer spotted it coming and immediately went paddling out to it. We have different ways of looking at different events. Now, the surfer will get up on top of a wave and realize that, wow, this is an opportunity. Rather than think he's going to be engulfed by it, he or she will get up on top of that wave and ride it out until the inevitable happens. It dissipates on the shore. It loses its punch, its power, and its energy. And all things in life work that way. Mm-hmm. And it's a natural course of life to have trauma. But it isn't natural to develop PTSD. It is much more natural to adapt to painful life circumstances and resume life. That's what we've learned from the animal world. Yeah, I go to Africa every now and then. I'm blessed with the chance to travel. And one of the things I've noticed at night, sleeping out of doors, is I'll hear the lions roar in the background. And then I'll hear this eerie, almost scream sound that comes from impalas who are being attacked and then eaten by the lions. But some impalas get away. They have a brush with death, a near-death experience with a lion, and they collapse to the ground, looking as though they were dead. And they just lay there, sometimes for extended period of times. And I've seen deer do this in the west, in Wyoming, my home, where I used to live. Their elk would do that when I'd approach a young calf, and it would freeze on the ground. What I noticed in Africa and what I've noticed in the mountains of Wyoming is that after the trauma has passed, and from the life of a elk calf, that might be me. I might be the trauma because I stumbled onto this helpless animal and mama ran away, the cow. What the animals then do is they get up on their feet after danger has passed, and they shiver, and they quiver and quake, and they kick like a bucking bronc. But this vibratory energy just goes over their body, and they shake off the tension. And it's not a surprise then to see that same impala who is frozen in terror on the ground, dissociating, looking like it wasn't even breathing on the ground, 1/2 hour maybe grazing with a herd of other impala as if nothing had happened. I'm suggesting, as is a psychologist by the name of Peter Levine, that the animals have much to teach us, and we've lost some of that knack to cope and adjust with life's inevitable traumas. We've lost some of that over time. We've, in fact, as I would say, and I wrote about this in my book, Ancient Ways, that we have de-evolved. We talk about the evolution of man. Well, there's sometimes a de-evolution where we lose certain talents and abilities that were a part of our life in nature that helped us survive. So now...
Why, Jerry? Why have we lost that?
They don't get used. They kind of atrophy. It's like even in our minds, if we don't use that explanatory style I talked about, we lose our flexibility. We have to exercise muscles, if you will, whether they're emotional muscles or physical muscles, to make them stronger. When we don't practice certain things, we lose them. By way of example, getting us a bit off track here, but I can remember standing on a mountaintop in Peru at about 14,000 feet with a group of Quero shamans. And there were 9 of them there, and they were talking, and this was midday, about noon, and they were pointing up to the sky and sweeping their hand across the sky. And I thought, oh, must be a jet going overhead, my paradigm. Then I thought, no, I bet it's a condor, which is like an eagle. They're a sacred animal. They're watching that. But I saw nothing. So through my interpreter, I said, what are they looking at? And he said, they're just marveling at the Milky Way. And I reminded him, it's noon. And he said, and what would that mean? I said, well, in the bright of daylight, I know better. You can't see the Milky Way. And he looked at me befuddled, and then he told the shamans that I didn't have vision that allowed me to see the Milky Way. And they thought I was joking and teasing them because they could all see it clearly. Always have, always could. But they use certain talents and abilities. They even say that they have the ability to look inside your body, the healers do, and see what's wrong inside of you by looking through your skin, almost like human x-ray machines. I've witnessed shamans in the jungle talking to one another without words and without language. In our movie world, we might call it beaming. But while they're on the hunt, and I've seen Bushmen in Africa do this too, they send messages to one another without words, without language, but the awareness and the knowledge arrives at the other person. And not even like in sentence form, suggesting, look out, there's a leopard behind you. It doesn't come that way, but someone will look over their shoulder and spot a leopard. So these are some of the abilities that I've seen in so-called primitive cultures that really suggest they're quite evolved and quite advanced. And from them, we're learning now additional ways to overcome life's traumas and additional ways to help people heal.
I'm speaking with Gerald Blanchard today on the Fallon Forum. We'll get right back to that, Gerald, after a little break here. I want to plug a Gateway Market as Des Moines' locally owned grocery store located at 20th and Woodland in the Sherman Hill neighborhood. Gateway is a full-service grocery that also features a popular cafe serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And don't forget Gateway Market's catering service, especially this time of the year. If you've got a holiday party or event planned, large or small, check out Gateway Market's fantastic and affordable catering service at www.gatewaymarket.com. That's Gateway Market, good food, great community. We'll be right back.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Tim Reynolds with Reynolds Energy Solutions will give you a comprehensive energy audit that will cost you nothing. Tim will identify the many ways in which you can reduce energy use while saving money. Ed Fallon had Tim over for an audit last month and was amazed at how much energy was going through the roof, the doors, and the windows. So, before the cold winds of winter blow, give Tim a call at 515-802-2801. That's 515-802-2801.
It's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422.
Times are tough, and most people are just trying to make their cars last a little bit longer. That's why you should know about Sargent's Garage in Des Moines. You can trust Sargent's to make the right diagnosis and give you a fair price. Whether it's a routine oil change or a major repair, Sargent's always does outstanding work. So don't give up on that old car just yet. Call Sargent's Garage at 246-8149. That's 246-8149 for Sargent's Garage.
I love driving to Newton to see the races.
Me too, but I only have to drive across town.
You live in Newton?
Yep, Newton's got small town charm and it's close to Des Moines. I love the safe, friendly neighborhoods and family-owned businesses. And Newton's wind energy industry is really taking off.
How'd you find your home?
Dan Kelly with First Choice Realty. And Dan helped me find my office too.
Next time, instead of just speeding by, I'll stop in and check out Newton.
Why don't you check out Newton? Call Dan Kelly at 641-521-9260 or Dan Kelly at mchsi.com.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back at the Fallon Forum. I'm your guest host, John Krieg. My guest today is Gerald Blanchard. We want to thank Mr. Baber's Neighbors for that fine tune, Ode to Jones, which started this segment. Also, I'd like to thank Reynolds Energy Solutions for sponsoring this segment of the program. We'll tell you a little bit more about Tim Reynolds and his fine work a little bit later. Again, my guest today, Gerald Blanchard, Des Moines-based author, researcher. Last year at this time, put out a book called Ancient Ways, Indigenous Healing Innovations for the 21st Century. Gerald's working right now on research regarding post-traumatic growth, and he's writing a new book on that topic, so we feel very fortunate to have him in the studio with us today. I'd like to invite audience to join us if you'd like. Join the conversation, calling 515-244-0077. That's 244-0077. We've also got a toll-free number. That's 855-244-0077. Gerald, I want to just ask you, we've been talking some about the tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut. And how is responding to trauma different for those, say, the parents or the people in the school in Newtown for whom that tragedy was very immediate and direct and personal? How is responding to that trauma different for them than it is, say, for, let's say, the rest of the country who's experiencing this through television? And I think many people feel terribly traumatized by the thought of such terrible gunfire and the murder of innocent children. How is responding to trauma different for those of us who are close to the tragedy and those of us more distant from it?
There's a question inside the question that you just raised, and I'll try and capture or answer both of them. Sometimes, when a trauma occurs, it feels very personal. And those can be some of the more difficult traumas to overcome. In other words, why did you rob and beat me? Why did you shoot my teacher, my classmate, my neighbor? When it's personalized, such as that, there's some danger of the trauma having quite an impact if we're not careful. Because the inevitable question arises, why me? What did I do to deserve this? I would contrast that with something I noticed living in Wyoming. I spent a lot of time on the outskirts of Yellowstone Park photographing grizzly bears. And I lived and visited on a ranch where we had wolves and bears on the property every day. And I came across numerous people who had been mauled by grizzlies, visited them in hospitals, and interviewed them. What I noticed from people mauled by grizzly bears is, and I wrote a book on this at one time, I photographed them with their heads shaved and all the staples and stitches in their head, and they're smiling in the photos. And they go right back into the forest and resume their recreational activities. That amazed me. And it set me on a course of wondering, why can something seemingly so horrific that I've witnessed on National Geographic specials not really impact locals in Wyoming? And what was one of the factors was this: it was not personal. It was just a mistake that was made. I wandered off the trail. I was maybe bushwhacking through the forest. I stumbled upon a mother with 2 grizzly cubs, and she had to neutralize the danger to her children. I represented trauma. She needed to stop me from harming the kids. So she may swat you with her claws, knock you down, shake you by the leg, but rarely kill or eat you, and then they're gone. In essence, in a very loud way, she's saying, be polite at my home, the wilderness. Now that's less personal. That's just, rules of the wilderness life. But when somebody comes into your school, plots and plans to come to your school and shoot at you and kill people, that's different at that point. So it can be a really powerful experience for a child to figure out what that was all about. Now, to your broader question of the national response, that can be very different because we oftentimes respond in accordance with what we're told by the media. The media will bring experts on television. Those experts will talk about PTSD. They'll talk about the danger, the damage, what I call the breakage theory, the broken vase theory, that when tragedy strikes, you will be broken and shattered for life. Watch out, look out. It's a fear response that the nation vicariously experiences by watching what's being reported. So seen through that lens of the media, we usually get the most horrific possibilities put before us. Now, when that enters a person's brain and then a trauma occurs, we've got that knowledge base downloaded to say to ourselves, oh my gosh, this is awful. This will destroy me. I'll watch for my demise to begin. And what I'd like in the days to come is for the media to balance that a bit and talk about the majority of people who experience trauma and overcome it and give people tips on how to survive and how to protect their children, buffer them, if you will, from life's ride that they're going to have. We sometimes raise children in such a sanitized way in America. You go into a restaurant and mums will get out their Purell and we'll wash our hands to get every germ killed. We might learn how to ride a bicycle and put training wheels on. And then we'll give our children a helmet to wear and some knee pads and some elbow pads. And life is about protecting people from ouch, from pain. So subtly, we're teaching our children to live in fear and in anticipation of harm coming our way. Go to Peru, live with the Quero people for a while, and one of the first things parents do there in this shamanic community I visited is they introduce young children to death right away. Their thinking is one of the biggest fears in life is injury or harm so severe that you could die. So children are introduced to the biggest fear right away. So what that means is they might handle a dying bird or a corpse of an animal. They might visit and touch the body of someone in their community who's recently died. But they get up close and personal and encounter and grapple with that fear close up under the guidance of a community that shows that child, we always get through this. It always passes. And the thinking of the elders, as I inquired, was that if you tackle the big fears right away and just don't run from, like the fear of death, you won't make it bigger than it already is. You'll make it smaller. And once you've got the big fear out of the way, the death fear, well then, the fear of falling off your bicycle with the training wheels looks mighty small. That helps prepare children. So there's a certain level of honesty that's necessary without implanting fear. We just expose children in thoughtful ways to some of life experiences and help them explain it and attach meaning to it. And that really, John, is what helps so many people recover from trauma. When they can find purpose and meaning to suffering. In other words, it's not to rationalize it or justify it and say, well, it's all okay, it was no big deal. No, I'm not going there. But what I am saying is that we should be the ones, not Fox or CNN or anyone else, we should be the ones making meaning out of our directly experienced life events, not being told by networks or psychologists how it will be. And when we have direct, hands-on, meaning-making experiences with mental flexibility, where we assign meaning and purpose behind all this, people tend to grow. And I'm not even talking about some people will say, well, that's fate. It was meant to be. It was meant to happen. That's not a good sign when I hear that, because that's saying I'm surrendering to life. There's a different approach that says I'm going to make some meaning out of some of this ugliness that has just happened. And I am going to be a better person, and I am going to make this a better nation. It's so different that, well, there's another mindset that says, well, if bad things have happened to me, I should deliver the same back. You hurt me, I should hurt you. You rob my home, I'll take a few of your things. Shoot at me, I'll shoot at you.
Kind of an argument for the death penalty that we've heard recently, isn't it?
It's that. It's like we get caught up in the disease of the perpetrators of crime without even knowing it's happening. And who wouldn't? If something horrible, if I were a parent in Newtown, Connecticut, and I had a child in that school who died, I had better have people like yourself and a good support network around me, watching me, helping me grieve and make sense of this so that I didn't do something stupid. Because I know all of us have murderous impulses. That's human nature. We have fight, we have flight, we have freeze as immediately available responses to scary situations. And sometimes I can feel fight. Just drive down 235 at 5:30 in the afternoon and see if road rage doesn't kick in sometimes. I mean, that is our nature. But what I'm saying is we need to rise above our nature and our impulses to get on top of that wave and surf it and look down on the world and what's happening and say, I'm not going to get swept up in that killer mentality. I want to be better than the killer. And I don't say that in an arrogant sort of way, but it's like a call to us to rise above. I had a couple Native American men that worked for me in my Wyoming office when I was there. And this one gentleman wasn't trying to be sarcastic or cryptic or anything like that, but when people would undergo a real hurtful period, somebody would do or say something unpleasant toward them, he would always say, somewhat jokingly, but with a message interwoven, he would say, be sure to thank them. They have so much that they've taught you. It's like we can learn from events, or we can just impulsively react, much like the killers, the abusers, the trauma makers. And that's what he was saying. Separate yourself from the perpetrator. So when harm is done in your own brain, he was saying, say thank you. There's so much to be learned here. And, that reminds me of Mahatma Gandhi. After being incarcerated scores of times without really violating any meaningful laws, one time in India, the English military forces arrested Gandhi, took him to a jail, put him in what they announced was a lice-infested uniform. They sent him into a latrine, which is a sloping floor with a hole in the ground, and they had him get down on his hands and knees with a guard there and scrub the floor. It's like, here you go, world leader. How's that feel? And in all honesty and with no vengeance in his heart, Gandhi looked up at his guard and sincerely said, thank you. There is so much for me to learn here. In other words, he was so practiced in rising above the fracas and not getting swept up by it. He had the vision, if you will, of the eagle soaring above. He had the vision of the person on top of the wave surfing and saw the bigger picture and did not want that guard, that oppressor's disease.
Jerry, let me just ask you, in thinking about child sexual abuse is a big problem, and how do people who have experienced child sexual abuse, how can they work on responding to trauma that was experienced, say, when they were a child? It seems like it's a different thing when you're responding to, and say perhaps an abuse that was in the past. How does a person grapple with that or respond to that?
First of all, there's much that can be done, and it doesn't always have to be a painful recovery process. We used to think in the business, in the psychology industry, that you had to experience a lot of grief and pain and tumultuous expression of painful emotions in order to recover. You had to dig up all kinds of old memories and examine each and every one of them. Now we're coming to realize that maybe that wasn't necessary, and it might even be harmful for some people. There are many solutions. I'll just throw a couple out there in the interest of time. But if people are at home, they should write down the letters EMDR, because that's an eye movement technique to help integrate past experiences into your way of life that isn't so painful.
Why don't we take a quick break, and we'll be right back. My name is John Craig, speaking with Gerald Blanchard. This segment of the show brought to you by Reynolds Energy Solutions. Energy conservation starts with efficiency, and efficiency starts right in your home. Tim Reynolds with Reynolds Energy Solutions is your go-to guy for a full-scale energy audit. You will absolutely be impressed with Tim's knowledge, professionalism, and service. And that's what this energy audit is. And what will this energy audit cost? Zero. Zip. Nada. And Tim will tell you what you need to do to save money and make your home more energy efficient. So give Tim a shout today at 515-802-2801. That's 802-2801. Or send him an email at reynolds.energysolutions@gmail.com. And just all personal testimony, Tim was at our home yesterday putting insulation in our attic, and we're awfully happy with his service. So we'll be right back after this break on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
I'm a burrito.
I'm a fighting burrito, full of fresh ingredients prepared before your very eyes.
I don't have eyes.
I have over 28 options and 268 million combinations, including Rizo for vegetarians.
I can take my meat off and call myself vegetarian.
Put that back on. The Fighting Burrito is locally owned.
I'm owned by some big corporation somewhere. Say, you want to go on a date?
No thanks. I'm seeing a quesadilla.
The Fighting Burrito online, fightingburrito.com. Join the fight.
More than ever, average Americans are being squeezed by high energy prices. For decades, oil companies like British Petroleum have demanded access to the oil off America's coasts, and they even receive taxpayer subsidies. Yet increased drilling won't solve America's energy problem. It will only increase oil industry profits. The Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club supports clean energy solutions, energy efficiency, and conservation as the pathway that's best for America, both for our environment and our economy. For more information, go to iowa.sierraclub.org. That's iowa.sierraclub.org.
Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines. And check out ritualcafe.com.
This is Dr. Holding at the Story County Veterinary Clinic. For 15 years, we have been spaying and neutering feral cat groups at affordable prices. Wild cats destroy game birds and songbirds. A single female cat can produce over 4,000 kittens in 7 years. The shelters are full, so unwanted kittens will be put to sleep. Your cats will stay home and stay healthy. Call us for all your dog and cat needs at the Story County Veterinary Clinic between Ames and Nevada on Highway 30, 1 mile east of Interstate 35, 515-232-8766.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to the Fallon Forum. I'm John Krieg. My guest today is Gerald Blanchard. I'd like to thank Pumptown, that their tune Bicycle, starting this segment. And I'd like to thank Fighting Burrito for sponsoring this final segment of the program today. And we'd like to invite our audience to be part of the conversation, 244-0077 or 855-244-0077. And I believe we have the Ed Fallon on the phone with us from somewhere out in Megabus land. Ed, are you there?
I am here. I am on Megabus somewhere between Chicago and Champaign, Illinois.
All right, well, welcome to the Fallon Forum, Ed.
It's great to be here. You know what, man? You're reminding me why I wear a hat on the set, because that glare off your forehead is kind of blinding.
I appreciate that, Ed. Yeah, what a sweet thing to say.
Have we lost our connection?
Darn. Soon, I hope.
And remember, you can hang up on a card anytime you want.
Anytime we want. Well, it's about time. Well, Ed, how's the trip going, and how's the Megabus experience for you?
It's okay. It's the first segment from Des Moines to Iowa City, internet access all the way. Yesterday, Iowa City to Chicago, intermittent. Today, not going so well yet, but hopefully that'll change. Mm-hmm. I have enough access to be able to notice that you're on the air, but it doesn't go much further than that. It's pretty slow. It's accessing the internet, but very, very slowly.
Okay, and you're heading down to Florida. Is that right, Ed?
Yeah, maybe I'll keep going, end up in South America somewhere. I don't know. But
we can only hope, Ed.
We can only hope.
Keep going.
But it's a packed bus. I mean, it seems to be pretty popular. When I went from Iowa City to Chicago, I was the only guy over 30
okay.
on the bus, and this time it's much more mixed age-wise, but it's packed.
And a comfortable ride, I understand.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, I like it personally. I like it better down on the lower level, more a little more comfortable there. But most people seem to flock upstairs. Maybe they like the better view.
Okay, alrighty.
I'll take a little legroom over view.
There you go, Ed. Well, anything else you want to add to? We appreciate the call. Anything else you want to throw in?
Oh, you're trying to get me off the air.
Well, subtly, Ed. Subtle. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you and Jerry for dialoguing, and I did notice there's a few people on Facebook who have commented about your conversation. So all good so far, but keep going. There's still a chance.
Okay. Well, well, Ed, bon voyage, bien viaje, and all those other things. Have a great trip.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
All righty. Thanks, Ed. That was Ed Fallon, everybody, calling from the road with his Megabus adventure. Again, welcome back to Fallon Forum. This is the final segment. I'm speaking with Gerald Blanchard, author of Ancient Ways. Jerry's a Des Moines-based author, researcher, and we're talking about post-traumatic growth today. Jerry, would you like to continue where we left off last time?
Sure. I should also point out, too, that I still do some psychotherapy as well. We were talking about what can someone who's sexually abused do, and, of course, there's much, much, much that could be said about that, and I was only going to hit on two things. One, those important letters EMDR, about eye movement, reintegration of painful life experiences. And there are level 2 trained people in the community of Des Moines who provide that service. It's amazing the power that it can take away from traumatic events and help people face them without all the discomfort that they may be known for a lifetime. So that's one solution. Another new solution, if you think about sexual abuse, it's about someone taking power over your life and your body. So we want some solutions that return the power to the victim. And one way to do that is through yoga, but not just any kind of yoga, trauma-sensitive yoga. And a couple of years ago, Bessel van der Kolk, trauma expert and neuroscientist from Harvard, began a program of instruction on implementing trauma-sensitive yoga. It helps victims of sexual abuse sort of re-inhabit their bodies after maybe their body became an enemy after the abuse. Maybe they didn't like their body. They didn't like to care for their body very well. They maybe developed eating disorders, sexual dysfunctions, but they sometimes punish their bodies for the way it has responded to natural stimulation by abnormal people. So trauma-sensitive yoga is a way to re-inhabit the body and feel things, sit with physical sensations, including discomfort, where you're the boss. It's just that the yoga instructor guides you through that process, and not surprisingly, here in Des Moines, we have several people now who are either trained or getting trained in trauma-sensitive yoga. So these aren't just distant solutions that are hard to find. We even have free trauma-sensitive yoga offered by crisis and advocacy services here in Polk County for people who are victims of sexual abuse. Now that's a gift to the community. So.
Well, thank you, Jerry, for that. I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about a lot of your research has been on indigenous peoples and how they respond. And would you like to say a little bit more about indigenous responses to trauma? And
I would. We can learn so much from the ancient, time-tested ways of handling life's vicissitudes, life's problems. And I just came back a couple of weeks ago, as you know, because we share office space in the friend's house. I just came back from Manitoba, Canada, where I spent time again with the Hollow Water First Nation of Ojibwa Indians. And there's a boy that always hangs out with me when I'm there. He's hung out with me since he was about 8. He's now about 15. He lost his father tragically. He lost his mother tragically. He lost his sister tragically in separate traumatic incidents. Then he was mistreated physically. He was abused. Then he was sexually abused. He was born out of a mother who had bathed him in alcohol. In other words, she was alcoholic and he came down with fetal alcohol syndrome, the brain damage that can result from that. He was diagnosed as ADHD. But every time I come to Manitoba, he always wants to know if I brought my little white machine, which is a brain calming device. It helps people calm their brains so they can access traumatic memories and be calm while they're doing so. It's very effective. Well, he tried that with me when he was about 8, and his parents couldn't believe what they saw afterward. Then a few years ago, when I arrived, this is curious, John, the night before I arrived, no one told him I was coming to the community. But the night before I got there, he went to his father and said, "When is that guy with the white machine coming back?" And his father was just stopped in his tracks. And he said, "Well, tomorrow morning." This boy had a knowing about him that was uncanny. So here I am in November up in Manitoba once more, and he's looking through the pickup truck that we came from Winnipeg in, and he saw the white box. So he sought me out, and we talked for a while. Then he said, "Can you get the machine?" I said, "Sure." And Danny and I went down to a lower level of this healing center. And I said, "What do you want done?" He said, "I want to focus. I want to be able to focus." He didn't even say on what. But after I calmed his brain with the machine and he went down to alpha frequency, that calm mental state, he was in what we call a hypnagogic state where you're really suggestible. And I saw his hands take on the shape of talons, like eagle talons. And I saw him floating, and he had his arms outspread. And when you live in the wilderness, you sometimes gain access to guardian animals, guardian spirits that come to you in times of trouble. An eagle put him on his back, put Danny on the eagle's back, and flew him to his hometown of Pagasi. And I heard him say, while he was in deep trance, a gate. And it was a gate to a cemetery. And he flew in with the eagle and met his deceased father there and was reassured that he was loved and not abandoned. Then he met his deceased mother there and was greeted with hugs and warmth. Then his sister. And he flew then out of that cemetery with that comforting information to go back to Hollow Water where his adoptive parents now live. And I could hear him saying, there's Pagasi, like he was looking down on. There's Grand Rapids. There's Blood Vein. There's Barrens River. There's Pine Falls. There's Hollow Water. He was soaring from above. And then the eagle, in his vision, cast him off, and he soared to the ground on his own, and having learned how to fly with the eagle, learned how to resolve issues on his own. And there on the ground was his adoptive mother and father awaiting him in his vision. And he said afterward, I realize now that I was loved before, and I'm still loved now. Boy, that was powerful. I didn't have to guide it. I didn't have to take him there. He had an inner doctor that we just had to activate in the wild country of the North, and the eagle that he's so associated with in his tribe was there for him. So sometimes we're not the healers, those of us with the titles and the letters behind our names. Sometimes we just assist and orchestrate an environment where someone can heal. But Danny came to me. He said what he wanted. He wanted the calm of a trance, and then things just took over from there. And then his fingers softened. They were no longer talons. His arms relaxed. He came back to this reality. We went upstairs and looked out the windows, and I saw him gazing into the distance, and he said, gosh, my vision is good today. Just like that of an eagle. And his parents have commented to me since then about how calm he seems to be. But he's reassured in his worthiness as a human being. Even the horrible things were done to him. He had horrible experiences. He was loved. He is loved. It's a message he needed to hear, and he found it, and he went for it in his own way.
What a wonderful story, Jerry. Seems like, in a sense, what you're saying, part of what you're saying is sort of that we need to, that healing is within us, perhaps, and there are a whole lot of obstacles to accessing it, but that if we can remove some of those obstacles, we can grow.
John, by definition, that's what a shaman does in indigenous cultures. They remove obstacles that are in the way of you healing yourself. That's very different than going to a physician or a psychologist and getting a prescription for a magic capsule.
I want to thank Gerald Blanchard. He's been my guest today on the Fallon Forum. Jerry's author of the book, Ancient Ways, Indigenous Healing Innovations for the 21st Century. He's working on a new book about post-traumatic growth. Jerry, thanks so much for being on the Fallon Forum.
You're very welcome.
I'd like to thank our sponsor for this segment, Fighting Burrito. One of Des Moines' newest and most exciting restaurants, Fighting Burrito, is located in the Nationwide building at 13th and Locust in downtown Des Moines. Fighting Burrito specializes in custom burritos. They're affordable, tasty, and entirely personalized. You build your burrito from a wide range of delicious options. Ed has lunch there at least once, often twice a week. He's never been disappointed and is sure you won't be either. So check out Fighting Burrito just south of Locust Street on 13th Street in the Nationwide building. Join the fight. I'd like to thank Maddie Arrington, our producer. I'd like to thank Webcast One Live for hosting the program. And check out the Fallon Forum website at www.fallonforum.com for podcasts and to find out how you can do your part to support the local, civil alternative to radical right radio. Next up on Webcast One Live, Bradshaw, who will be with you from 1 until 3. Thanks so much for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going, though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.